Every once in a while, you come across a comic book that just really inspires you and makes you love it and makes you think about it a lot as well. And recently I got to read the entire series, which unfortunately is only 8 issues, and that being g.o.d.s, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Valerio Schiti and coloring done by Marte Gracia. So welcome back, my fellow comic book friends, to another spoiler-free comic book review. So let's kick it. So what do I love about this? Geez, where do I even begin? Alright, first of all, let's go with the fact that Jonathan Hickman on the writing, he really amps it up to 11 with his quirky antics. You know, he is very intelligent when it comes to writing. He does banter really well. He gets into depth in the conversations. He packs in a lot into every single issue, and you need to unpack it because it's a lot to take in. And I know that this is one of the reasons why it has repelled a lot of readers. There's a lot to digest for your brain. It is heavy on the dialogue, and the dialogue can be a little bit complex. You know, the storytelling in itself can go over a lot of people's heads. I know there are aspects in it for me that have, and doing additional rereadings of this is really gonna help me able to absorb a lot more information. So what is g.o.d.s really about? Look, I'm really bad at explaining what g.o.d.s is, so I'm just gonna give you like a bit of a synopsis, right? It's a reinvention of the cosmology of the Marvel Universe. What happens when the powers that be meets the natural order of things? You can freely jump into this series without having any prior knowledge of any other content in the Marvel Universe. It's absolutely fine. This is a standalone experience. You can just experience it for what it is. When it comes to comic books, I wouldn't say this is beginner friendly because of how complex it can be. But gosh, the artwork though is gorgeous. It is so gorgeous. Even if you just want to look at the pictures, that alone may be enough for you. Because g.o.d.s is a little bit complex, it is multi-layered. It's also a great insight into the individuals that work for the powers that be. You know, basically they're servants per se, and what they have to contend with and to go through. Some of these individuals live through hundreds, if not thousands of years, specifically our main character, Win. And speaking of characters, what I really love about them is how well fleshed out they are. You know, we have Aiko Mako, 97th centivar of the natural order of things. I know that probably doesn't mean much to you. There's Dmitry Krakov, envoy of the natural order of things. He's actually partner up with Win, which is the main character that we follow. He's the avatar of the powers that be. There's also Mia Diamaria. She comes in a little bit later in the story. And of course, there's Doctor Strange. Come to think of it, it is very difficult to explain what this story is, you know, without going into spoilers. It's an experience. Sometimes it feels like something out of Sandman, sometimes it feels like something out of Doctor Strange, maybe it's a combination of the two, and sometimes it feels like it's American Gods by Neil Gaiman. It's not a typical comic book where it has a lot of action in it. Yeah, it does have some neat action sequences, and when they are there, they're actually really super cool. It's a clever comic book where we have our protagonist that attempts to problem solve the various issues as opposed to tackle them head on like a brawler. Especially in the first issue, there's a particular instance where there's a whole bunch of heroes and, you know, God's servants that are getting together to fight this great entity. And our protagonist, he goes about the matter a little bit differently by attempting to problem solve the issue from the outside before jumping into the battle. And the way that it's done, it's just so brilliant. It does take you on this voyage with the protagonist, and it's almost hilarious as to what this protagonist is doing in order to find an alternative way to win the battle. It's Jonathan Hickman at his finest, you know, being clever with his writing. And speaking of the writing, you're really gonna have to be 110% switched on when you're reading this. You know, I'm not a clever guy. I'm a simpleton, you know, I've got like an IQ of 14 or something. Yeah, I know, thank you, that's very high. But like, you do have to be very focused when you're reading this and paying attention. I know it's weird to say that about a comic book, but it is one of those that's, you know, that's up there requiring a little bit of brain power, which I think is probably one of the reasons why this series was cut short. Hell, I don't know, maybe that was Jonathan Hickman's master plan to finish the series in 8 issues, because he just like smashes so much in there that it does almost kind of feel complete, but it just feels like there is so much more to tell because it's so vast, you know, it's basically the cosmos and the other dimensions and everything. There's so many stories to tell, there's so many things to see, and the little fraction that we do see is extremely fascinating, and I just wish we got a whole much more with this. You know, if this gets a deluxe hardcover of some sort, you know I'm gonna get it because it's gonna be gorgeous and it's gonna be fun to own and reread and probably catch some things that I missed first time around. But man, oh man, do I wish that this comic book just kept going. Which is why I feel it's a little bit ahead of its time. May not be appreciated by the masses because of what it is, but maybe one day we as a society will kind of reach that level of playing field that Jonathan Hickman is at. Maybe. By the way, Valerio Schiti, I just have to praise his artwork. Oh, it's so good. Every single page is so good. And speaking of that, consistency. Ooh, yeah. Chef's kisses. Consistency is like on top of its game here. You know, you have the same creative team each and every single issue. This is a kind of thing that's a little bit rare with longer streaks of comics, with longer runs. You just feel so privileged to have a consistent experience all the way through, which is why I'm really going to miss this comic book, as well as it just being freaking awesome. But right now, I just gotta be content with what we got here. Anyway, if you have read Gods, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll hit you up soon.